Live from San Francisco, California, it's theCUBE at VMworld 2014. Brought to you by VMware, Cisco, EMC, HP, and Nutanix. Now, here are your hosts, John Furrier and Stu Miniman.
Okay, welcome back. We're live in San Francisco, California, VMworld 2012. This is theCUBE. We go out to the events, extract the signal from the noise. I'm John Furrier, and my co-host for this segment is Stu Miniman, analyst at wikibon.org, and we're pleased to have star-studded guest, Martin Casado. Always brings the energy. Day 3, we need to get that injection. Formerly of Nicira, which was purchased by VMware, and that huge deal everyone talked about, it feels like 20 years ago, 2 years ago. Welcome back to theCUBE. Martin, great to see you.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Looking good, doing a selfie in theCUBE with Stu, that's nice, we'll post that later. So I got to ask you, we were just talking prior to come in, this is, are we, again, another year of SDN? I mean, finally, next year's going to be the year of SDN. Is it going to be this year, next year? This happened in the local area network days back in, in the 90s, the year of the LAN, next year.
Yeah.
What's the story? Is it here or not? What's the deal?
No. That's a good question. So I think if I have one high level point for this VMworld, which is the last 7 years, it's like, it's coming in the future. It's almost like I feel like I've been leading people, going over the mountains. I'm like, I swear, over that next mountain, that is the time for network virtualization. I mean, that's the time for network virtualization. I promise it's there. I know, you're tired and you're hungry and you haven't eaten and you're cold. So the dam broke 6 months ago and we're arrived. So now, this is the first VMworld, I'm like, we've arrived. I mean, and you just look at the commercials, right? I mean, we're at $100 million run rate. We've got wins in every vertical. We've got over 150 paying customers. I mean, it's a big deal. Now this is a real business and a real momentum. And so we shift from this kind of evangelical notion to okay, people are using it. Why are they using it? How do you enable sales forces? What does this mean to the channel? I mean, this actually now becomes more of a business issue.
Let's go back, let's rewind. The dam broke 6 months ago. Just describe that moment. Where were you?
Right.
What's happening? What specifically broke, and where? What happened? I mean, what specifically?
Right.
Take us through that. Those first couple steps.
Right. So maybe I'll provide just a little bit of history, which is okay. So Nicira was founded in 2007. So I actually kind of left my defense, and I went and I founded Nicira with Scott and Nick. The first version of MVP came out in about 2010, but it didn't have support for vSphere. Right. So then in 2012 we got acquired by VMware, and about 9 months ago did we have a supported version of NSX that supported vSphere that kind of had a lot of the bells and whistles. Since then, we've grown the customer base to over 150 paying customers and a $100 million run rate business. And this is in 9 months. And by the way, the core sales team, we just added NSX to the price list for the core sales team in June 6th, so that just started. So what we're seeing is we have a viable product in market, we've got a sales team that can sell it, we've got massive customer adoptions in many verticals, and this has all happened in the last 9 months. So it's just a tremendous amount of momentum.
So I got to ask you, I know Stu's chomping at the bit, but I want to ask you, EMC had the same issue with Extreme IO, a lot of hype with Flash, and just on directed availability, they just, the dump truck of dropping all the product to their existing install base. How much was that VMware starving customers versus product market fit, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, that's actually a great question. So I actually think that we're actually sales limited, right? This is software. We have a direct sales force. These are direct deals. A lot of these are in production. Actually, I was talking with Andrew Lerner recently from Gartner, and he talked to 15 of our customer references. 10 of them were in production, so this is a good statistical sampling of them in production. And so I think that there's a real need, there's a real product market fit, and now we just need to find the right use cases that can be carried by a sales team into the customer base.
Yeah, so Martin, one of the proof points for me is the FUD in the marketplace is deafening. Everybody out there has said that the architecture, it doesn't scale, which if we look at how this was built, everything that you've done with NSX and Nicira before, I mean, scale is mentioned in every sentence. So can you kind of address that? Why is that being said out there, and what's the reality?
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult for me to talk to every piece of FUD because there's so much of it. I heard actually recently that Nicira was started in 2004, which is not true because being the one that started it, it was in 2007. I heard that MVP has been around for 7 years, which is not true. I actually contributed a lot of the early code, so I wrote the code, and it hasn't been out that long. And so, I mean, there's just
You wrote the code?
I was going to say, I'm just saying. So there's just been so many threads and so many narratives by so many people. And when it comes to things like scale and performance, I mean, let's look back. I mean, some of our early customers, by the way, we've never lost an early customer. Some of our early customers were development partnerships. That means like, actually, in one customer, I personally remember being there and writing code, like to fix stuff while things were happening. So, you have early product in market with customers, and you always have issues, whether that's scale or performance or stability or whatever. This happens in early code development. And so I think what's happening is I think that people will cherry pick these examples and say it's an architectural issue, right? Which is like a real classic conflation between say like implementation and architecture. Like products have issues, especially early products, but like architecturally, the scaling is fine. Certainly performance is fine. And what's nice about this is actually going up the sales ramp, we've got lots of customers using this stuff, and things are looking great. And so the good news is we don't have to pick historical examples anymore. We don't have to be archaeologists. We can look at how people are using it today.
Okay, so last year when NSX was launched, partners were tripping over themselves to say how they work really closely with you. Can you give us a little bit of insight from an engineering standpoint? I mean, you now have the whole, networking is your whole baby. So, what's going on with the partnerships and how are you working together with the ecosystem?
Right, so just to be clear, there are sales alliances like resellers and VARs, and then there's technical partners. Which one do you want me to address?
Technical partners.
Oh yeah, so technical partners. So, NSX is a platform, right? And in fact, we've reaffirmed that with our recent announcements around the Goldilocks zone, which is a security platform. And so we're at a point now that we're largely market-led, which is we look at the customers and what they want and which partners they want us to work with, and that's where we spend engineering resources. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, partnering requires not just engineering resources, but it requires us to do validation and design and so forth. And so we've engaged with a number of partners. We've made a number of large announcements recently on the switch vendors. I mean, good announcements with Arista, with Cumulus, with HP. We've done a number of announcements with Palo Alto Networks, joint customers with all of these guys, same thing. And so, we engage them as quickly as we can. We do what's best to prioritize resources based on customer demand, and we're very excited about the partner ecosystem we've developed.
Yeah, so even when I hear people talk about the federation, sometimes people get a little confused. I've heard people say EMC is going to buy a networking switch company, or VMware is going to get into the business. The whole Project Marvin thing on converged infrastructure, everybody was completely convinced that VMware was going to go into the hardware business. I mean, VMware in its place is software, right?
We're software, we're a software company, this is a software play. I mean, I think what's happening is, and not just from network virtualization. I mean, you're lifting functionality out of the network and you're re-implementing it in software, whether that software is a Generation 3 application or it's a network overlay. And so that allows people to view the physical network as basically transport. And this is kind of creating somewhat of a food fight on the physical networking layer. Like, where in the value chain are our customers comfortable with? Do they want to do Dell? Do they want to do Dell and Cumulus? Do they want to do Arista? Do they want to do Cisco? And so it's nice to see it open up and allow the market to decide. I think it's way too early for us to choose a winner.
All right, so Martin, first time we had you on theCUBE, you were banging on the table talking about how open source was going to be critical. I heard a lot of open source announcements here at the show. So, OCP, OpenStack, and where does kind of, I guess start with OpenStack and open source, fit into the discussion for your group today? Yeah,
definitely. So, I mean, I feel like I'm like progressively moving up layers in open source. So, we started with Open vSwitch, which is a data path layer technology, right? Like, that has been a resounding success, and it's in so many clouds, it's adopted by so many companies, both competitors and non-competitors alike. I still have a large team working on it. It's still, open source and available in Linux.
So I got a question from the community on that. The VMware version of the Open vSwitch, will that interoperate with other controllers?
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. So I mean, Open vSwitch is Open vSwitch. It's an open source product that, I mean, there's,
you guys have kind of your own flavor though that ships with NSX.
We do not have our own flavor.
Okay, it's 100% the same.
We have Open vSwitch, we have standard Open vSwitch. Okay. And Open vSwitch is Open vSwitch, right? And so that, I mean, is Open vSwitch. So then you go up there. So then I say, okay, so the southbound interface, OVSDB, OpenFlow, Open vSwitch, something that, my teams have worked on. Then you've got the controller layer. So you want a northbound interface to that, which is like Neutron and Quantum. I've got 2 core developers on it. This is a project we've been involved in both cultivating or incubating early on and developing. And then now I'm going even a layer above that, which is policy. So once that configuration and management gets worked out, you go to the policy layer, and this is the Congress project that I started, right? So also an open source development effort, a team that I lead that's doing that. So I mean, I just feel like I'm touching many parts of the stack, I'm just slowly working my way up.
We asked Pat that same question, so I got to come back to you and bring up a different perspective. I know Stu wanted to go in the weeds there, but I want to take it up a level for the developers. Obviously, the apps are driving and dictating terms to the infrastructure. The apps are hungry to program the infrastructure,
Yeah.
right? So I got to get your take on this. Open source, obviously, we all love it, and Docker's showing a little bit of a twist on how they're implementing it, which is beautiful, and really helps developers. So that's the container, okay, that's nice, great. Infrastructure as code. The vision has always been, get the infrastructure in a position where policy, configuration management, provisioning, all the automation can be programmed by apps. Where are we, and how the work that you're doing accelerates that dream and that position for app developers?
Okay, so I'm going to take a totally contrarian view here. So here's my contrarian view. I don't think applications app developers want to even think about infrastructure. I don't think there'll ever be an API to the infrastructure. I don't think applications will ever talk to the infrastructure. So I come back from the days of like
contrarian? That's what applications, they hate code, they hate the network, don't they?
No, but I don't think they'll ever program it, or they're ever going to want to control it, ever. So like I come from the days of like working in like supercomputers of different architectures. And if I look at the evolution of programming models for the application, before we used to know everything. We used to know cache layouts. We used to know the caching hierarchy, page sizes. We know where memory was, what was local, what was remote. We would know different, and if you look at the actual programming model, it's gone far enough away that now you don't care about these things anymore, and you just treat compute like compute, and network like network, and you don't talk to it. I actually think like the history of the computer science industry is people trying to provide APIs to the infrastructure and application writers not using it. I mean, this has happened many times in networking. So I think what's going to happen is application writers are going to forget about the infrastructure. The infrastructure should be virtualized with a software layer, totally virtualized as a software layer, and they'll be totally decoupled.
So like a control plane for the app. So the app itself has to do its own intelligence.
Exactly, the app doesn't care about the infrastructure. It won't talk to the infrastructure, won't program the infrastructure. The app is the app. It'll be concerned with its data and its computation, and an intelligent software layer will manage everything for the infrastructure.
Great, let's take that next step. So what's going on in the plumbing to make that happen? So what do you see in sequence to pull this off?
Yeah, so I think that the most disruptive thing that's happening over the last 10 years is we're seeing functionality migrate away from hardware and into a software layer that's an actual infrastructure layer. Now that intelligence, it may be in a hypervisor, it may be in an OS kernel, it may be, heck, it may be in a load balancer or a web server, but it's a piece of infrastructure that the app uses, and that's intelligence in software as an additional layer. So I think it's valid for us to say there will be a software infrastructure layer. It's a software infrastructure layer, it evolves at its own pace, it provides its own services, and the app sits on top of that. And I don't think the app cares about it at all. I think the app is oblivious.
It shouldn't care.
Exactly, it shouldn't care. And so it's the responsibility of this infrastructure software layer to provide a utopian compute surface, a utopian data center surface for the app.
It kills DevOps just to be called dev. Right. I mean, if what you're saying is true, it's just development.
Exactly right. I mean, listen, to me the utopian future is you've got this intelligent software layer that's providing infrastructure, and the interface to the user is a policy interface. Now there are always going to be business needs, whether it's security needs, whether it's performance needs, whether it's economic needs, that we have to communicate with that interface. But that's a policy interface. This is policy wonks and business wonks that are talking to this thing.
I mean, I always said when Intel processor is the most complex software, but no one ever programs because they have a hardened top on it, so why not create that for infrastructure?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, this is where we're going. I mean, I think this is the biggest movement in IT in the last 10 years, is the movement of functionality from classic hardware into a software infrastructure layer.
How far are we for that utopian? You just peg a year, pick a solar system where we might fly to see that, or in reality, how far along are we on that journey?
I mean, I think that.
I mean, obviously, it's great vision.
No, that's right. I mean. Here's what's hard for me for predictions. In 50 years, will the human race still be the same species? Probably, but will we have the same type of
it's this
government?
decade. How close are we? I mean, network virtualization teases out this concept.
Exactly.
I get that. So is it 5 years? Is it 10? Order of magnitude.
No, great question. So I think for Generation 3 data centers, we've already arrived. Right? We've already arrived, we're already here, we can see it, we can look at it, we can understand the benefits. For traditional IT, we're now going up the adoption ramp. I think we're crossing the chasm. I think actually this year's the chasm crossing year, which means we'll be entering a mature market in 2015.
Awesome.
On the networking side. And I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we'll have a heavy tail to deal with afterwards.
Yeah, Martin, when I hear about applications and infrastructure, I'm thinking about what Docker's doing out there. I'm wondering, I mean, it's early days. At DockerCon, there was like one page written about networking earlier this year.
Yeah.
How do containers and Docker fit into, your vision of the future?
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, I'm interested in changing networking. That's what I'm interested in. And to change networking, I need to touch as many points of the network as possible, whether that's a legacy physical workload, it's a bare metal workload, it's a container, it's a VM, and whether that VM is KVM, Xen, or whatever. And so for me, a container is just another endpoint that I want to connect to. What's interesting about the container discussion though is containers often host Gen 3 apps. And so Gen 3 apps don't requires much features in the virtual network because they re-implement a lot of it. So one of the core use cases for them is actually security, because now we can implement security services in a separate trust domain, and we can do that fully compatible with things like NSX. So I think that using containers is great, and we certainly want to support them with NSX, and we will.
So give us the update on the news, your news on the promotion. Apparently there's a promotion recently. Is there a new role? I mean, apparently, first the deck chairs always move in VMware, but we do like the senior executive roles. You got Pat, you got the back office CFO here there, and you got Carl go-to-market M&A, and Bill over there. What's your new role? What's your official title and new focus?
Yeah, so I'm now the GM of the Network Security Business Unit, so I'm responsible for everything. So. P&L? I'm responsible for P&L, so I want to say that...
Welcome to the big leagues, baby. Gun to your head.
I find that there's lots of synergies in this organization, and 1 + 1 = 3, and we leverage our core competency to come together.
Bingo.
How did I do?
Well, now you're under a lot of pressure. See, revenue generating, what's your run rate you're doing? You said 100 million?
100 million this year.
And just in
NSX bookings, yeah.
Great, awesome. Well, Martine, always great to get you. I want to get one final bumper sticker. I know you always have something great to add. This year's VMworld, put the bumper sticker on the show for the folks out there watching. How would you summarize the network virtualization evolution and journey? Where are we, and the impact to IT?
I think it's 2 words. Well, one of them is a contraction. 2 words, one of which is a contraction. It's here.
Okay, we'll be right back live. San Francisco VMworld 2014 is theCUBE. We'll be right back.
Thanks.